A dark, intense, post-apocalyptic survival thriller blending political drama, urban horror, and psychological warfare. Hello survivors, thanks for tuning in. Your support keeps this story alive. Don't forget to subscribe and join our growing survivor community. Drop your city in the comments and let's begin the story. The morning sun rose weakly over Pripyat, its rays struggling to pierce the heavy gray haze that clung stubbornly to the town. The streets, empty except for a few early workers and the occasional patrol car, seemed unusually silent, an unnatural quiet that made the distant hum of machinery at Chernobyl plant feel almost ominous. Dmitri, the security assistant officer, walked briskly through the northern perimeter, his coat buttoned tightly against the lingering chill. The alarm bells had sounded earlier, yet the chaos of the plant was far from visible here. From outside, everything seemed under control, but Dmitri knew better. He had seen the fire, the radiation sensors blinking wildly in red on the control panels. The men who should have been evacuated were still inside the plant, their faces pale and tense. Orders had come down from above. Officials who rarely set foot in the plant were insisting that the work continue. Maintain operations, contain the situation. Words that sounded calm but carried a deadly weight. Dmitri's stomach churned as he realized the full implication. The government was hiding the truth. And in their shadows, death had already begun to seep silently into every corner. Dmitri quickened his pace as he approached the workers' barracks. Inside, the men were coughing quietly, rubbing at their eyes and throats. Some were dizzy, struggling to maintain their balance, yet no one dared speak of it aloud. The instructions were clear: do not panic. Report only what is necessary. The danger was not to be discussed. But Dmitri could feel it. Something was horribly wrong. He had been trained to notice signs, to act decisively in emergencies, and every instinct screamed that waiting for permission to act was already too late. At the same time, a deeper fear gnawed at him: his wife, Anna. She lived in one of the apartments closest to the plant. She had been coughing too, thin wisps of smoke curling through her hair from the fireplaces, the same way she always did in the early winter mornings. But this cough was different. It was not the mild irritation of smoke. It was deeper, heavier, as if her lungs themselves were protesting the invisible poison in the air. Dmitri wanted to rush to her to check if she was safe, but he couldn't leave the post. He was bound by duty, but his duty now felt like a trap. The very place he swore to protect and the orders he followed were turning against the people he loved. By late afternoon, news, though heavily filtered, began trickling in from the officials. Minor incident, they said, under control. They held press conferences with rehearsed smiles, their eyes glazed and careful. The workers were told to continue monitoring, to stay at their stations. Dmitri's chest tightened with anger. This was no minor incident. He had seen the core breach, the radiation levels rising faster than any emergency plan could handle. Men were dying silently, their bodies succumbing before anyone outside the plant could even comprehend the danger. And yet the government's mouthpiece continued to calm the public with lies. Dmitri had long trusted the hierarchy. A lifetime of service in security meant believing in orders, in chain of command, in the government's protection. But today, something had changed. The fire in the reactor was not just a technical failure. It was a mirror reflecting the rot at the heart of the system. And standing at that mirror, Dmitri realized that his life and Anna's were now pawns in a game much larger than he could influence. His loyalty had limits, and those limits were being tested. He tried calling Anna. The line was dead. He tried again and again. Each time, only static answered him. His pulse quickened.
The town itself seemed to tremble under the invisible weight of radiation. He remembered his training, the signs of exposure, nausea, fatigue, headaches, and eventually organ failure. He knew what unchecked exposure meant. He thought of the men inside the plant, their faces pale under the fluorescent lights, coughing quietly, knowing but unable to act. And he thought of Anna in her small apartment, likely unaware of the true scale of the danger outside her door. Dmitri wanted to rush to her to check if she was safe, but he couldn't leave the post. He was bound by duty, but his duty now felt like a trap. The very place he swore to protect and the orders he followed were turning against the people he loved. By late afternoon, news, though heavily filtered, began trickling in from the officials. Minor incident, they said, under control. They held press conferences with rehearsed smiles, their eyes glazed and careful. The workers were told to continue monitoring, to stay at their stations. Dmitri's chest tightened with anger. This was no minor incident. He had seen the core breach, the radiation levels rising faster than any emergency plan could handle. Men were dying silently, their bodies succumbing before anyone outside the plant could even comprehend the danger. And yet the government's mouthpiece continued to calm the public with lies. Dmitri had long trusted the hierarchy. A lifetime of service in security meant believing in orders, in chain of command, in the government's protection. But today, something had changed. The fire in the reactor was not just a technical failure. It was a mirror reflecting the rot at the heart of the system. And standing at that mirror, Dmitri realized that his life and Anna's were now pawns in a game much larger than he could influence. His loyalty had limits, and those limits were being tested. He tried calling Anna. The line was dead. He tried again and again. Each time, only static answered him. His pulse quickened. The town itself seemed to tremble under the invisible weight of radiation. He remembered his training, the signs of exposure, nausea, fatigue, headaches, and eventually organ failure. He knew what unchecked exposure meant. He thought of the men inside the plant, their faces pale under the fluorescent lights, coughing quietly, knowing but unable to act. And he thought of Anna and her small apartment, likely unaware of the true scale of the danger outside her door. By evening, Dmitri made his first difficult decision. He had to assess the situation closer to the plant. He knew the rules, knew the risks of stepping outside the controlled perimeters, but the alternative, waiting for instructions, following orders blindly, could mean death for Anna and countless others. He slipped past the checkpoint quietly, using his position of security to justify his presence if questioned. The closer he got, the more tangible the devastation became. The air shimmered with heat, the telltale hum of radiation subtly prickling his skin. The ground around the reactor was strangely barren, as if the earth itself recoiled from the invisible menace. He caught sight of the workers again. Some staggered, some were lying against walls. One man clutched his stomach, muttering incoherently. Dmitri wanted to scream at the officials to demand immediate evacuation, but there was no one who could override the orders. And then he saw the first real sign that no one could ignore. A flash of movement from the protective suits. One worker had collapsed completely, unmoving. The others merely continued their work. Shock rooted Dmitri to the spot. The moral weight of what he had witnessed pressed down like lead. His responsibility was clear. If the government refused to act, he would have to act himself. Returning home that night was worse than any patrol. Anna had been waiting, a worried look etched across her face. He tried to mask his fear, to comfort her, but she noticed. "Dmitri, something's wrong," she whispered. And he realized in that moment that the truth could not stay hidden from her forever. He could see it in her eyes, the confusion, the trust, the growing fear. But words were inadequate. How could he explain radiation, invisible death, a government determined to lie, and a town slowly poisoning its own citizens? Instead, he held her close, promising that everything would be fine, all the while knowing it would not be. That night, as they lay in silence, he felt the weight of inevitability pressing down. They would have to escape, or perish. Even as Dmitri slept fitfully, the plant continued its deadly hum. The government continued its lies. The town remained blind. And Dmitri knew that this was only the beginning, that what had started as a disaster was now transforming into a race against death, a moral and physical struggle that would demand everything he had, and more. And above all, it would test the bonds of love, loyalty, and survival in ways he couldn't yet imagine.
The next morning, the sun rose over Pripyat with the same weak, gray light as yesterday, but Dmitri noticed a subtle difference. The air felt heavier, almost oppressive, as if the invisible poison that had begun to seep into the town had gained weight overnight. He found Anna sitting by the small window in their apartment, her shoulders hunched and her hands trembling slightly as she tried to prepare breakfast. The smell of burnt bread filled the room, but Dmitri barely noticed it. His eyes were fixed on her. Anna looked up at him, and her face bore the first real signs of radiation's invisible grip. Her eyes, usually bright with life, seemed dull, almost glassy. Her cheeks, pale even for winter, had taken on a sickly, grayish hue. Dmitri's chest tightened, and a wave of panic surged through him. "Anna, how do you feel?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though he feared he already knew the answer. I don't know," she whispered, her voice faint and quivering. "My head hurts, my stomach, I feel so tired." She tried to smile, but the effort failed. Dmitri stepped closer, gently taking her hand. It was cold, clammy, unlike the warm hand he had held just a day before. Dmitri's mind raced. He had read the signs of radiation sickness in manuals, seen the emergency reports in secret. Nausea, fatigue, dizziness, internal bleeding. He thought of the men inside the plant, collapsing one by one, and realized that Anna's symptoms matched those early signs perfectly. He felt a deep, hollow fear grip his chest. If he did nothing, if he followed orders and waited for help that would never come, she would die. His thoughts went to the government officials, their calm voices assuring everyone that there was no danger. Their reassurances were lies, and every passing moment was a step closer to death. Dmitri clenched his fists, the metal of his security badge cutting into his palm as he realized the impossible choice before him. Obey the rules and watch his wife slowly succumb to an invisible killer, or break every law, risk everything, and try to escape with her. He knelt beside her, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. "Anna, we need to leave, now. You're not safe here." Anna's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Leave? Leave Pripyat? Dmitri, the authorities, the soldiers, they won't let us. They won't matter," Dmitri interrupted, his voice firm, trembling with urgency. "They already decided what to do with the town. They will let people die to hide the truth. But we can still survive if we leave. I can get us out." Anna looked away, tears welling in her eyes. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that escape was possible, but the danger outside was as real as the invisible poison in the air. But where would we go? How? How could we survive outside? Dmitri took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm the storm of panic inside. He had thought of this already, planned for it, and now he had no choice but to act. "There's a safe place. I've seen the routes. We'll avoid checkpoints, avoid patrols. But we need supplies, radiation-proof suits, medicine, food, water, and the KI tablets.
Everything we take now is for our survival. Anna, I promise, I won't let anything happen to you. I won't let you die here." Anna's hand tightened around his. "And what about everyone else? What about your friends, your colleagues?" Dmitri shook his head, grief and guilt twisting his stomach. "I can't save them all. I can only save you. And if I fail, if we stay, there will be no second chance." The weight of his words settled over the room, thick and suffocating. Anna knew he was right. She could feel the sickness in her own body, the weakness spreading through her veins, a cold reminder that every moment counted. And in that instant, fear transformed into resolve. "I trust you," she whispered, her voice trembling but determined. We will go." Dmitri held her close, letting the brief warmth of their embrace shield them from the horror outside. They spent the day quietly preparing, gathering what little they could from their apartment. Dmitri made a list, ticking off items in his mind: protective clothing, rations, clean water, first aid, the potassium iodide tablets he had managed to hide from prying eyes. Every item was a lifeline, a chance to stay ahead of the invisible threat surrounding them. But even as they packed, Dmitri could sense the walls closing in. Patrols moved through the streets, their boots clattering like a countdown to inevitable discovery. Each shadow could conceal a soldier, each passing car a checkpoint that could halt their escape. The air was heavy with fear, yet they pressed on, fueled by necessity and desperation. That night, Dmitri stood by the window, looking out at the dim glow of the plant in the distance. Smoke curled from the damaged reactor, a faint orange hue glowing through the pall of gray. He clenched his fists, a single thought hammering in his mind. He would not let Anna die here, not from radiation, not from lies, not from fear. Anna came up behind him, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Dmitri, are we really going to do this? Leave everything?" He turned, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, there's no other choice. We leave tonight, before anyone notices, before it's too late." The decision was made. In the quiet apartment, under the shadow of an invisible enemy, Dmitri and Anna prepared to take the first step into an uncertain and deadly journey. There was no going back. The town, the plant, the lies, they all faded behind them as they faced the truth. Survival depended on courage, cunning, and sheer will. As darkness fell over Pripyat, Dmitri packed the last of their supplies, glancing at Anna sleeping fitfully on the small bed. Her pale face, so fragile and vulnerable, became his anchor. He whispered a promise under his breath: "I will get us out of here, alive." Outside, the wind carried the faint metallic taste of radiation, a silent reminder that danger was already closing in. But Dmitri's mind was made up. The escape had begun, not in footsteps yet, but in decision, resolve, and love. Tonight, he would take the first step toward freedom, and with Anna by his side, he believed, even in the darkest shadow of Chernobyl, that survival was still possible.
The night was unnaturally silent, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Pripyat lay under a pall of gray haze, the radioactive mist from the damaged Chernobyl reactor swirling faintly in the dim streetlights. Dmitri moved cautiously, Anna close behind him, her hand in his, her fragile form shivering in the cold. Every step carried the weight of urgency, for they were not just fleeing a town, they were fleeing invisible death itself. Dmitri had spent hours planning this moment, but now that it had come, the enormity of it pressed down on him. To survive, they needed more than courage, they needed supplies. Not ordinary provisions, but specialized equipment. Radiation-proof suits, first aid kits, rations, water, and, most importantly, potassium iodide, Ki tablets, the small but critical defense against radioactive iodine.
Without them, Anna would be a walking target for radiation poisoning. The only place to acquire these supplies was the emergency storehouse, a small building under tight surveillance and guarded by one man who knew Dmitri well, Lavarov, his close friend and trusted security guard. Lavarov had been by his side for years, a comrade through training, drills, and countless minor emergencies. But today, Lavarov represented the last obstacle between life and death. Government regulations forbade the release of any emergency equipment without explicit permission, and Lavarov had sworn to uphold those rules, no matter what. Dmitri approached the storehouse quietly, heart pounding in his chest. He could see the faint glow of the lamps outside, and Lavarov's silhouette framed against the doorway. "Dmitri," Lavarov's voice called, sharp and tense. "It's late. What are you doing here? No one is allowed to enter without orders." "I know, Lavarov," Dmitri replied, keeping his voice calm but firm. "But I don't have time to wait for orders. Anna is sick. Radiation is everywhere. If we don't get these supplies, she will die." Lavarov stepped forward, his brow furrowed, torn between duty and friendship. "Dmitri, you're talking about breaking the rules. You know what that means. I can't." "You can," Dmitri interrupted, his voice rising with desperation. "You have to. I can't let her die because of rules meant to protect people from themselves. Please, you know me. You know what kind of man I am. I'm asking you as a friend. Help me. Save her." Lavarov shook his head, a shadow of pain crossing his face. "Dmitri, there are things you don't understand. The government, the plant, they've made decisions for everyone's safety. You can't just decide for yourself." Dmitri stepped closer, the determination in his eyes meeting Lavarov's conflicted stare. "And yet, they've already decided for us. They've decided that we don't matter, that we die silently while they keep their secrets. Lavarov, look at me. Look at Anna." He gestured toward the small figure huddled in the shadows behind him. "She is barely alive. Every second we waste, she is closer to death. Help me, or we both lose her." For a long moment, silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Then Lavarov's jaw tightened. "Dmitri, if I let you take the supplies, I'm breaking every law I've sworn to uphold. If anyone finds out, you know what will happen. You could get us both killed." "I don't care," Dmitri said, his voice low but unwavering. "I don't care about the law. I don't care about rules. I care about Anna. That's all that matters." Lavarov's eyes flickered with something like recognition, pain, and fear all at once. He took a step back. "Dmitri, you don't understand what you're doing. There's a line." "I understand perfectly," Dmitri snapped, "and I'm crossing it, because if I don't, she dies." Then it happened. A brief, terrible confrontation. Neither man truly wanted violence, but desperation and fear collided. Lavarov tried to block Dmitri's path, tried to stop him physically, but Dmitri's mind had already made the impossible decision. He needed the supplies. He needed Anna alive. And when a hand raised in opposition became the last barrier between life and death, Dmitri acted. The fight was brief, chaotic, and tragic. In the end, Lavarov lay still, a shocked expression frozen on his face, and Dmitri felt a cold, hollow emptiness take over his chest. The man who had been his friend, his confidant, was gone. His body slumped in the doorway, and the harsh reality hit Dmitri like a tidal wave. He had killed him. For a moment, everything seemed suspended. Dmitri's hands shook as he looked at his friend, guilt gnawing at him like fire. He had saved Anna, yes, but at what cost? The rules he had broken were one thing, the life he had taken was another entirely. The weight of it pressed down on him, suffocating, and he could feel the first tremors of a breakdown creeping in. But survival did not wait. He forced himself to move, gathering the equipment quickly. The protective suits, ration packs, bottles of water, first aid kits, and, carefully, reverently, the small packets of potassium iodide tablets. Each item was a lifeline, and each lifeline was stained with the memory of what he had just done. Anna watched him silently, sensing his turmoil, though she did not yet know the full horror. Dmitri wrapped her in the radiation-proof suit, guiding her carefully as he packed the supplies into a small, sturdy backpack. The KI tablets he placed in his own pocket, their weight feeling symbolic, a small shield against an invisible enemy, a talisman against the overwhelming dread surrounding them. As they prepared to leave, Dmitri cast one last glance at Lavarov's lifeless form. The guilt, grief, and trauma threatened to consume him, but he knew he had no choice. Every second they lingered increased the danger. He whispered a quiet apology, a prayer, a promise. He did not know if Lavarov could hear him, did not know if forgiveness was possible, but he needed to acknowledge the weight of his actions. "Come on," he said finally, his voice hollow but resolute. "We don't have time." Anna clung to him as they slipped into the shadows, moving tearfully through the silent streets of Pripyat. Each step carried them closer to freedom, but also deeper into a moral and emotional darkness that would haunt Dmitri for days, weeks, and months to come. The hallucinations he felt instinctively were already waiting, just beyond the edges of consciousness, ready to make him question every choice, every action, every breath. The first leg of their escape had begun, not yet running from checkpoints or patrols, but running from morality, loyalty, and the unbearable truth of survival. Dmitri carried Anna, he carried the supplies, and he carried a new, heavier burden. The knowledge that the line between right and wrong had been crossed, and there was no turning back. Outside, the wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying the faint metallic tang of radiation. And Dmitri, holding Anna close, whispered a promise into the darkness. "We will survive this. I will get you out alive. I swear it."
The streets of Pripyat were eerily silent in the early hours before dawn, save for the distant hum of the damaged reactor, a faint, insidious pulse that seemed to echo inside Dmitri's chest. He walked swiftly, Anna leaning heavily on him, her small frame nearly invisible beneath the layers of the radiation-proof suit he had managed to acquire. Every step was a mixture of hope and dread, but Dmitri could no longer ignore the weight pressing on his mind, the death of Lavarov. Even as he moved, he felt the memory of his friend's face flash before his eyes. Lavarov's expression, pain, disbelief, betrayal, haunted him relentlessly. Dmitri had tried to justify it, told himself that it was a necessary act for Anna's survival, but the words felt hollow. Each heartbeat was accompanied by a pang of guilt so sharp it left him gasping for breath. He wondered, not for the first time, whether survival could ever be worth this. Could he live with the knowledge that he had killed someone who trusted him? Anna, sensing his growing distress, whispered softly, "Dmitri, are you okay?" Her voice, though weak, carried a concern that made his heart ache. He wanted to comfort her, to lie and say he was fine, but the truth would have crushed her too. Instead, he forced a tight smile. "I'm fine," he murmured, though the words were meaningless even to his own ears. "Just tired, that's all." The guilt did not rest. At times he imagined Lavarov standing before him, silent, watching, his eyes accusing. At others, the visions became more vivid. Lavarov's mouth moving, words forming that no one else could hear. "Why? Why did you kill me, Dmitri?" the voice whispered. Dmitri's own reflection in a puddle would sometimes twist into Lavarov's familiar face, eyes filled with betrayal and pain. The hallucinations began subtly at first, a shadow here, a flicker of movement there, but quickly intensified. Dmitri would catch sight of Lavarov in the corner of his vision, standing perfectly still, watching him.
Sometimes Lavrov would speak, warning him of dangers ahead, almost as if he had become both protector and tormentor from beyond the grave. Other times, the apparition would taunt him, reminding him of the irreversible act he had committed. Sleep became impossible. Each hour spent resting brought only more vivid hallucinations and nightmares of the confrontation, the struggle, the moment Lavrov fell lifeless to the ground. Dmitri's mind spun endlessly between justification and self-condemnation. He knew survival required focus, but his thoughts were a whirlwind of grief, guilt, and fear. Meanwhile, Anna's condition worsened. The early signs of radiation sickness had progressed. Fatigue had become weakness, dizziness more frequent, and her skin had begun to show faint, blotchy marks. Dmitri had tried to care for her as best he could, administering the limited medication they had brought, ensuring she took the potassium iodide tablets on schedule. But the physical toll of their escape, combined with the psychological weight of his guilt, made him increasingly desperate. The streets of Pripyat were eerily silent in the early hours before dawn, save for the distant hum of the damaged reactor, a faint, insidious pulse that seemed to echo inside Dmitri's chest. He walked swiftly, Anna leaning heavily on him, her small frame nearly invisible beneath the layers of the radiation-proof suit he had managed to acquire. Every step was a mixture of hope and dread, but Dmitri could no longer ignore the weight pressing on his mind, the death of Lavrov. Even as he moved, he felt the memory of his friend's face flash before his eyes. Lavrov's expression, pain, disbelief, betrayal, haunted him relentlessly. Dmitri had tried to justify it, told himself that it was a necessary act for Anna's survival, but the words felt hollow. Each heartbeat was accompanied by a pang of guilt so sharp it left him gasping for breath. He wondered, not for the first time, whether survival could ever be worth this. Could he live with the knowledge that he had killed someone who trusted him? Anna, sensing his growing distress, whispered softly, "Dmitri, are you okay?" Her voice, though weak, carried a concern that made his heart ache. He wanted to comfort her, to lie and say he was fine, but the truth would have crushed her too. Instead, he forced a tight smile. "I'm fine," he murmured, though the words were meaningless even to his own ears. "Just tired, that's all." The guilt did not rest. At times, he imagined Lavrov standing before him, silent, watching, his eyes accusing. At others, the visions became more vivid. Lavrov's mouth moving, words forming that no one else could hear. "Why? Why did you kill me, Dmitri?" the voice whispered. Dmitri's own reflection in a puddle would sometimes twist into Lavrov's familiar face, eyes filled with betrayal and pain. The hallucinations began subtly at first, a shadow here, a flicker of movement there, but quickly intensified. Dmitri would catch sight of Lavrov in the corner of his vision, standing perfectly still, watching him. Sometimes Lavrov would speak, warning him of dangers ahead, almost as if he had become both protector and tormentor from beyond the grave. Other times, the apparition would taunt him, reminding him of the irreversible act he had committed. Sleep became impossible. Each hour spent resting brought only more vivid hallucinations and nightmares of the confrontation, the struggle, the moment Lavrov fell lifeless to the ground. Dmitri's mind spun endlessly between justification and self-condemnation. He knew survival required focus, but his thoughts were a whirlwind of grief, guilt, and fear. Meanwhile, Anna's condition worsened. The early signs of radiation sickness had progressed. Fatigue had become weakness, dizziness more frequent, and her skin had begun to show faint, blotchy marks. Dmitri had tried to care for her as best he could, administering the limited medication they had brought, ensuring she took the potassium iodide tablets on schedule. But the physical toll of their escape, combined with the psychological weight of his guilt, made him increasingly desperate.
He could no longer separate the two realities, the external danger of the radiation and the soldiers, and the internal danger of his own crumbling psyche. Lavrow's apparition had become a constant companion. Sometimes he appeared beside Anna, warning Dmitri, "She's weak, you must hurry." Other times, he would loom over Dmitri's shoulders, whispering, "You've taken a life. Can you live with that?" Dmitri's responses varied from whispered apologies to outright arguments with the spectral form. By midday, the hallucinations had grown so strong that Dmitri began to question his own sanity. He found himself talking aloud, giving instructions to an invisible Lavrow, asking for approval or forgiveness, his eyes darting nervously toward shadows that weren't there. Each interaction drained him further, but there was no time to stop. Every moment wasted increased Anna's risk, and he knew that if he faltered, both of them could die. The psychological pressure was compounded by the physical demands of the journey. They had to navigate around military checkpoints, patrols, and areas of high radiation, often crawling through abandoned buildings or moving under the cover of darkness. Anna's condition meant Dmitri had to carry much of the weight, yet the backpack filled with supplies reminded him constantly of the cost of survival, the necessary burden of the things that might save them. Every decision felt like a tightrope walk between life and death, both externally and within his mind. One night, while resting in a crumbling apartment building far from the main streets, Dmitri's hallucination took a new form. Lavrow appeared clearly, standing in the doorway, and spoke in a voice that trembled with grief and accusation. "Dmitri, why did you do it?" Dmitri's hand shook as he clutched his face. I had no choice. Anna would have died." His voice broke. "I couldn't let her die. I had to survive." The apparition's face softened for a moment, but only slightly, a cruel echo of empathy. "And now, can you live with yourself?" I don't know," Dmitri admitted, his voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can, but I have to. I have to." The hallucinatory Lavrow disappeared into the shadows, leaving Dmitri trembling in the dim light. For hours, he lay awake imagining the life he had taken, replaying the struggle and trying to reconcile it with the love he held for Anna. The guilt was relentless, and yet the need to protect her was stronger. By the following day, Dmitri realized the only way forward was to channel his torment into action. He could not afford to collapse under the weight of grief or hallucination, not while Anna depended on him. Each step they took, every obstacle navigated, became both a literal and symbolic act of survival. Each act of care for Anna, helping her walk, ensuring she took her medicine, carrying her when she could no longer move, was a way to atone for the life he had taken. Still, the mental toll was mounting. He often found himself speaking to Lavrow as if the apparition were real, arguing, begging for forgiveness, explaining his choices, rationalizing his actions. In the quiet moments, Dmitri understood that these hallucinations were more than visions. They were manifestations of his guilt, the moral weight of the act, and the friendship he had destroyed. And yet, they were also strangely necessary, forcing him to confront the consequences of his survival decisions in a way he could not escape. Despite the torment, Dmitri pressed on. He had learned to use the hallucinations to anticipate danger, to reinforce caution, and to prepare for the external threats around them. Each time Lavrow appeared, warning him of a patrol or a contaminated area, Dmitri would listen, following the guidance while simultaneously trying to hold on to the knowledge that it was a creation of his mind. The duality was exhausting, but essential. As the episode of his mental collapse deepened, Dmitri's determination remained unshaken. Survival, for both him and Anna, demanded endurance not only of the body, but of the mind. Every step was a battle against external forces, radiation, patrols, environmental hazards, and internal ones, guilt, grief, and hallucination. By nightfall, Anna leaned heavily on him once again, her body frail, but her trust unbroken. Dmitri carried her to a small, abandoned factory, using it as a temporary shelter. He whispered promises into the darkness. "We will make it. I swear, I will get us out alive. I will not fail you." And yet in the depths of his mind, the image of Livreau's accusing eyes would not leave him. The hallucination followed him even into rest, a constant reminder of the cost of survival and the fine line between life and moral damnation.
The early morning fog hung low over Pripyat, thick and acrid with the metallic tang of radiation. Dmitri moved cautiously through the deserted streets, his eyes scanning every shadow, every faint glimmer of movement. Anna, barely able to keep pace, clung to his arm. Her weakness was now pronounced, each step a struggle. The radiation-proof suits they wore offered some protection, but the invisible threat remained, pressing against them with every breath. Dmitri's mind raced with calculations. Checkpoints were scattered throughout the town like silent sentinels, and patrolling soldiers moved in predictable patterns, their boots echoing ominously in the empty streets. One wrong step, one careless glance, and the escape could end in arrest or death. He adjusted Anna's grip on his hand, whispering, "Stay close. Don't speak unless I say so. We can do this." The first checkpoint appeared sooner than he expected, a concrete barricade with a single spotlight illuminating the street ahead. Soldiers were stationed on either side, their rifles slung but ready. Dmitri froze in the shadows, calculating. He knew there was no way to confront them directly. Discretion and stealth were the only options. "Follow my lead," he whispered to Anna. He led her along a narrow alley that skirted the perimeter, keeping them low and hidden. Every step was deliberate, measured, the gravel crunching softly under his boots. Anna's breathing was shallow, her small hand in his clammy with sweat. They had to move slowly to avoid detection, but speed was essential to reduce radiation exposure. As they crept along, Dmitri's hallucinations appeared again. Lazarov's face emerged from the shadows beside him. "Careful, patrol ahead. Wrong move and you'll both die," the apparition whispered. Dmitri flinched, but the warning, though imaginary, was useful. He adjusted their path, crouching lower, using debris and abandoned vehicles as cover. The soldiers' flashlight beams swept across the streets intermittently, forcing Dmitri and Anna to freeze in place, hearts hammering. Each pass of the light felt like a judgment, a threat that could expose them in an instant. Dmitri's mind went through every contingency, every potential path, and he chose the safest route, a narrow service road that led around the checkpoint, covered by the thick fog. The first obstacle was behind them, but the journey was far from safe. They entered the outskirts of the town, where the devastation from the reactor's explosion was more visible. Crumbling buildings, abandoned cars, and scorched trees created a landscape that was both desolate and treacherous. Dmitri kept Anna close, guiding her through the rubble, avoiding puddles of water that might be contaminated with radiation. The air was heavier here, tinged with the faint but unmistakable smell of burning chemicals. Dmitri checked the Geiger counter he had smuggled from the plant. The needle quivered wildly. Radiation levels were dangerously high. Every second they spent outside protective cover increased their risk. He forced Anna to take small, deliberate steps, ensuring she didn't overexert herself. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to weigh heavily on both of them. Anna's energy waned, her steps slowed, and she stumbled. Dmitri caught her, holding her up against his chest. "Almost there, just a little further," he whispered. But he could feel his own strength diminishing. Sleep deprivation, stress, and the moral weight of Lazarov's death pressed down relentlessly. Every moment was a test of endurance, of willpower, of the human spirit's ability to survive under impossible circumstances. At midday, they reached the second checkpoint. This one was more heavily guarded, a barricade reinforced with sandbags and barbed wire. Soldiers patrolled in pairs, scanning the fog with binoculars. Dmitri assessed the situation. There was no way to sneak past on the main road, they would be seen. He looked around and spotted a partially collapsed warehouse to the side, its shadowy interior offering a possible route. "This way," he murmured, guiding Anna toward the warehouse. Inside, debris and broken machinery provided cover. Dmitri's heart pounded as they moved silently, the sounds of their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and rust. He could feel the radiation pressing in, a subtle buzzing in his ears, a faint taste of metal on his tongue. Every move was calculated, every breath measured.
Inside the warehouse, Dmitri paused to catch his breath and check Anna's condition. She was pale, sweating, and shivering despite the suit. He gave her water from their limited supply and ensured she took another potassium iodide tablet. Each pill was a shield against the invisible enemy, and he administered them with the precision of a man on the edge of despair and determination. The hallucinations intensified in this confined space. Lavrov's face appeared again, this time closer, almost pressing against Dmitri's vision. "You can't fail. She's depending on you," the apparition whispered. Dmitri clenched his fists, his mind a battlefield of guilt and resolve. "I won't fail, I promise," he muttered aloud. The words were both an oath and a plea for self-forgiveness. Emerging from the warehouse, they found a narrow drainage canal leading away from the main roads. Dmitri lowered Anna into the canal, the murky water offering concealment, but at the risk of contamination. He followed closely, supporting her as they moved through the shallow water, the cold biting at their skin. Above them, the patrol's footsteps echoed on the streets, unaware of the two fugitives slipping silently through the shadows. Hours of this exhausting, tense maneuvering brought them closer to the outskirts of Pripyat, to the edge of the exclusion zone, where the environment, though hazardous, was less patrolled. Dmitri allowed himself a brief moment of relief, though the weight of radiation, exhaustion, and hallucination remained. By nightfall, they reached a partially destroyed farmhouse, a temporary shelter where they could rest without immediate threat from patrols. Dmitri checked Anna's pulse and breathing, ensuring she was stable. "We made it this far," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Rest now. We keep moving at first light." As Anna slept, Dmitri sat by the window staring at the distant glow of the reactor. The radiation's hum was a constant reminder that the danger was far from over. The hallucinations of Lavrov had not disappeared. They lingered in the corners of his mind, questioning, accusing, warning. Dmitri's mind was exhausted, yet he could not allow himself to succumb. Survival demanded vigilance, courage, and a relentless will to continue. The first real leg of their escape, the streets, checkpoints, and patrols of Pripyat, had over. They had survived by cunning, stealth, and determination. But Dmitri knew the worst was yet to come. The exclusion zone was vast, filled with radiation, crumbling infrastructure, and unpredictable dangers. Every step forward would test them further, both physically and mentally. He whispered to himself, a promise more than a prayer. "We will survive. I will get us through this, no matter what." The night settled over the desolate outskirts of Pripyat like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Dmitri and Anna had taken refuge in the ruins of a half-collapsed farmhouse, its walls pocked with bullet holes and stained with soot from fires long extinguished. Anna lay curled under the thin blanket, exhausted beyond words, while Dmitri sat against a wall, his back pressed to crumbling bricks, staring into the darkness. The silence was absolute, except for the faint, constant hum of radiation, a low vibration that seemed to pulse through the air, through the walls, and through Dmitri himself. It began subtly at first, a shadow flitting at the edge of his vision, a flicker that vanished when he looked directly at it. But soon the apparition became undeniable. Lavrov's face emerged from the darkness, pale, unwavering, and impossibly real. He leaned against the broken doorframe, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on Dmitri. "You can't rest yet," Lavrov whispered, his voice eerily familiar.
The path ahead is dangerous. One wrong step, and you'll both die. Dmitri clenched his fists. The hallucination was relentless. He could feel every heartbeat, every pang of guilt, every memory of the struggle that had ended in Lazarov's death. "I know," Dmitri muttered. "I won't fail." "Do you think she trusts you?" Lazarov's voice cut like a knife. "Do you think you deserve to survive after what you've done?" Dmitri's chest tightened, a wave of nausea washing over him. The hallucinations had become a mirror of his guilt, a constant reminder that survival came at a cost he could never escape. And yet, the apparition was also strangely useful. Lavrov would warn him of dangers that Dmitri's own senses sometimes missed. The faint movement of patrols in the distance, contaminated puddles hidden beneath rubble, structural weaknesses in the abandoned buildings. Dmitri had learned to listen, to differentiate between hallucination and reality. And in this eerie duality, Lavrov became both tormentor and guide. Every whisper, every warning carried the weight of morality and survival intertwined. At dawn, Dmitri carefully roused Anna. Her condition had worsened overnight. Her skin was blotchy and her movements were sluggish. The potassium iodide tablets had helped, but not enough to reverse the physical toll of exposure. Dmitri lifted her carefully, supporting her weight as they prepared to move. The landscape outside was gray and foreboding, littered with abandoned vehicles, twisted metal, and scorched earth. The radiation levels, Dmitri noted with the portable Geiger counter, were dangerously high, but they had no choice. To stay was to die. As they moved, the hallucinations persisted. Lazarov's figure appeared alongside them, sometimes walking just ahead, sometimes hovering over Dmitri's shoulder. "Step carefully," he would whisper. "There's a patrol hidden in the fog. Too far to see, too close to ignore." Dmitri would follow the guidance, often finding himself narrowly avoiding detection, the apparition acting as an unseen mentor, despite the agony it inflicted on his conscience. Yet the torment was relentless. Every warning came paired with accusation. "Do you deserve this?" Lavrov would ask. "Can you live knowing what you've done?" Dmitri's replies were whispered under his breath. Apologies to the ghost, to himself, and perhaps to Anna, though she remained unaware of the internal battle raging in his mind. They traversed ruined streets and open fields, keeping low, avoiding patrols, and minimizing exposure. The hallucinations became more elaborate, sometimes manifesting as multiple versions of Lavrov, each representing a different facet of Dmitri's guilt. One would scold, another would warn, and a third would silently observe, its eyes filled with sorrow.
Anna noticed Dmitri speaking softly, seemingly to the wind, and asked, "Dmitri, are you talking to someone?" He hesitated, then forced a tight smile. "No, just thinking out loud." But even as he spoke, the hallucination persisted, pressing its presence upon him, refusing to be ignored. The journey brought them to a partially collapsed bridge, spanning a shallow, stagnant river. Dmitri evaluated the structure, weighing the risk of crossing against the necessity of progress. Lavrov's apparition appeared, leaning against the rusted railing. "It won't hold both of you. Choose carefully." Dmitri's hands shook as he guided Anna across, one step at a time, testing each plank. Halfway across, a plank cracked beneath Anna's weight. Dmitri caught her just in time, the vision of Lavrov giving a faint, approving nod before vanishing into the mist. The hallucination, cruel and cruelly helpful, had taught him vigilance. Hours passed like this, a blur of ruins, fog, and constant tension. Dmitri's mind was stretched to the limit. The hallucinations, although increasingly vivid and emotionally taxing, were also keeping him alive. They were a strange, twisted form of guidance, born from his own guilt, a moral compass forged in the fires of desperation. By evening, they found a small abandoned barn, a temporary shelter. Anna collapsed onto a pile of old hay, shivering and pale. Dmitri wrapped her tightly, whispering reassurances. "We're okay. For now, we'll rest. Tomorrow, we keep moving." Alone for a moment, Dmitri leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. Lavrov's apparition appeared again, voice low and accusatory. "You think you've done enough? You've survived, yes, but at what cost? Do you even remember why you started this?" "I remember," Dmitri muttered, tears stinging his eyes. "I started this to save her. I started this for Anna, and I will keep going, no matter what." The apparition lingered, its face expressionless, watching, waiting. Dmitri knew it was a fragment of his mind, a manifestation of guilt, fear, and trauma, but it was also a constant, impossible companion. He could not escape it, and perhaps he did not want to. It forced him to confront every moral and emotional weight he carried, and in that confrontation, he found the resolve to continue. As night fell, Dmitri closed his eyes briefly, Anna resting beside him. The hallucinations faded into the background, leaving him with a grim and unshakable determination. The road ahead was perilous. Radiation, patrols, and the unforgiving landscape awaited. But he had learned to survive in two worlds simultaneously: the external reality of danger and the internal reality of guilt, guided and haunted by the ghost of Lavrov. Tomorrow, he knew, they would face the next stage, deeper into the exclusion zone, further from safety and closer to the unknown. But for now, in this fragile shelter, he whispered a promise into the cold, empty night. "We will survive, together. I swear it, Lavrov. I swear it, for her."
The sun rose weakly over the abandoned fields outside Pripyat, a pale gray disk barely piercing the heavy morning fog. Dmitri and Anna had spent another restless night in the ruins of an old farmhouse, huddled against the cold. Anna's frail form stirred beside him, her breathing uneven, the fatigue etched deeply into every line of her body. Dmitri pressed a hand to her forehead, noting the pallor, the lingering tremor. Radiation had already begun to exact a deeper toll, and his fear tightened around his chest like an iron band. He had been silent most of the night, speaking only when necessary, each word weighed by guilt, exhaustion, and hallucinations. Lavrov's apparition had appeared again, hovering at the edge of the room, his pale face full of judgment. "Do you think you can save her and yourself?" the ghost whispered. "You think surviving alone is enough?" Dmitri's jaw tightened. "I have to try. That's all I can do." As Anna stirred and sat upright, Dmitri offered her some water, and she drank slowly, her eyes heavy with both sleep and pain. She met his gaze for a moment, a faint smile attempting to break through her exhaustion. "Dmitri, do you think we'll make it?" she asked, her voice fragile. "We will," Dmitri said, though the conviction in his voice was brittle, forced. He wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, if only to keep his own fear at bay. "We'll survive this together." Anna's hand brushed against her stomach, a motion almost unconscious. Dmitri's attention snapped to it, a pang of anxiety slicing through him. He had been so focused on keeping her alive that he had not noticed subtle changes: slight nausea, fatigue beyond normal radiation sickness, and the faint but persistent swelling in her abdomen.
"Anna," Dmitri's voice was soft, cautious. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Anna hesitated, her eyes wide, uncertainty flickering across her face. Then, in a whisper, trembling as much from emotion as from exhaustion, she said, "Dmitri, I think I'm pregnant." For a long moment, Dmitri could not speak. The words reverberated in his mind, overwhelming and impossible, a spark of hope and terror intertwined. Pregnant, a new life growing inside Anna, a fragile, impermanent promise in a world that had been reduced to death and ruin. His heart surged with conflicting emotions, joy, relief, fear, and a crushing weight of responsibility. You're sure?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible, trembling. Anna nodded, her hands covering her mouth. I think so. I felt different, weak, yes, but more than that, something inside, growing." Dmitri's mind raced. The survival of one life had already been an impossible burden. Now there were two. His chest tightened with a mixture of hope and terror. How could he protect not only Anna, but a child in this world poisoned by radiation and surrounded by death? Every mistake, every misstep could endanger them both. We'll make it," Dmitri whispered, more to himself than to her. He wanted to believe it, needed to believe it. But even as he spoke, the hallucinations began again, Lavrov appearing in the corner of the room, silent, watching, judgment etched into his spectral face. "You have brought another life into this," the ghost said finally, voice low and accusing. "You understand what that means. You are responsible for more than survival now. Can you bear it?" Dmitri closed his eyes, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on him. I have to," he said, his voice shaking. "I have no choice. I will protect them both."
The hallucination lingered, nodding slowly, almost approving, though its presence remained a torment, a reminder of the lives affected by his actions. The death of Lavrov, the betrayals, the moral cost of survival. Dmitri's guilt intertwined with hope, a strange duality that both strengthened and tormented him. Over the next few days, their journey continued, but now with a renewed urgency. Every step Dmitri took was measured not only for Anna's safety, but also for the life growing inside her. He rationed food more carefully, ensured she rested whenever possible, and administered the potassium iodide tablets without fail. The hallucinations of Lavrov became sharper, more persistent, oscillating between warnings of external danger and reminders of Dmitri's moral debts. At one point, as they navigated through a collapsed section of highway, Dmitri stumbled under the combined weight of his backpack, Anna's frailty, and the constant tension of danger. Lavrov appeared beside him instantly, whispering, "You must keep her safe. No mistakes." Dmitri corrected his step, supporting Anna as they crossed the treacherous ground. The ghost's presence, once purely accusatory, now carried a dual role, harsh teacher and spectral guardian. Anna, though weakened, sensed Dmitri's growing burden. "Dmitri, you carry too much," she said quietly one evening as they rested in a ruined barn. "Your guilt, it eats you, but you mustn't let it consume you. Not for me, not for the baby." He shook his head, unable to release the weight entirely. "I can't," he admitted, voice breaking. "Every step I take, every life I've touched, it haunts me. I don't know how to forgive myself." Anna placed a trembling hand over his. "Then let us forgive each other. Let us fight for what we still have. That's all that matters now." For a brief moment, Dmitri allowed himself a fragile peace, a fleeting sense of purpose. The new life inside Anna became a symbol of hope, a reason to keep moving, to endure. But even as he embraced this hope, the hallucinations remained. Lavrov's face would appear in mirrors, in shadows, in reflections in the water. Sometimes he would silently watch. Other times he would speak, reminding Dmitri of the cost of his choices.
the line between morality and survival. Yet Dmitri found a strange resilience in this torment. The hallucinations forced him to be vigilant, to act with precision, and to maintain unwavering focus on Anna's safety. The moral weight, though unbearable at times, became a strange form of guidance, shaping every decision, every step, every rationed sip of water, and measured stride through contaminated fields. One night, as the wind howled through the skeletal remains of a burned-out warehouse, Dmitri held Anna close, feeling the small, almost imperceptible stirrings of life within her. The knowledge was both terrifying and exhilarating. He whispered to her, to the child, to the empty shadows around him, "We will survive this. I will get us through for both of you. I swear it." The journey ahead remained uncertain. Radiation, soldiers, and the unforgiving terrain awaited them. But now, the stakes had changed. Dmitri's purpose was no longer just survival. It was protection, redemption, and hope embodied in the small life growing inside Anna. And though the hallucinations of Lavrov would continue to haunt him, torment him, and guide him, they were also a constant reminder of why he could not falter, could not rest, could not fail. In that fragile, perilous moment, Dmitri realized that survival was no longer merely about escaping the deadly city. It was about carrying hope forward, even when surrounded by death, shadows, and moral ruin. And with Anna and the child she carried, he found a reason to endure, to fight, and to continue walking the impossible path of life in the shadow of Chernobyl.
The night was still, but not peaceful. The exclusion zone stretched before them like a graveyard of human ambition and error. Twisted metal, shattered concrete, and the ever-present hum of radiation. Dmitri led Anna through the ruins, her steps faltering but determined. She was now visibly pregnant, the reality of the new life growing inside her both fragile and miraculous. Dmitri's heart ached with love, fear, and guilt. The hallucinations of Lavrov had become more intense than ever. The ghost now walked alongside him constantly, never silent, always a reminder of the cost of survival. Sometimes Lavrov's face was accusatory, sometimes instructive, and sometimes eerily supportive, warning Dmitri of dangers that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The patrols ahead, too many, the apparition whispered as Dmitri scanned the shadows. You must act carefully. One mistake, and it ends here. Dmitri's mind raced. Every decision, every movement was a balance between survival, guilt, and the imperative to protect Anna and her child. The supplies they had scavenged were dwindling, and the radiation levels were rising as they moved closer to the core of the exclusion zone. Each step forward was a step into death, yet turning back was impossible. By midday, they reached a small ruined outpost on the edge of a forest. It offered temporary shelter, but Dmitri knew it could not hold them for long. Soldiers could appear at any moment, and the radiation levels were dangerously high. Anna collapsed against him, exhausted and trembling. Dmitri knelt beside her, pressing her hands to his chest. "You're doing so well," he whispered. "We're almost there, just a little longer." But even as he spoke, he knew his words were both promise and illusion. The journey would demand the ultimate sacrifice. The forest ahead was dense, a twisted maze of charred trees and fallen branches. It was also their last chance, a route that could lead them out of the exclusion zone into safer territory. But Dmitri knew it was a trap of nature itself. Unstable ground, radiation hotspots, and the ever-present risk of discovery. He studied the terrain, calculating, weighing, planning.
As they moved through the undergrowth, Anna suddenly stumbled, a sharp cry escaping her lips. Dmitri caught her instantly.
her small frame nearly collapsing under his arm. "I've got you," he whispered fiercely, fear twisting in his chest. Her eyes were wide with terror, her trust in him absolute. And in that moment, Dmitri realized the truth he had been avoiding. There was only one way to ensure her survival, the child's survival, and that was to face the danger alone. He knew what he had to do. "Anna," he said gently, forcing calm into his voice, "you need to keep going. Keep moving forward. Do not stop. Do not look back. You must survive." "No!" she cried, panic breaking through her exhaustion. "We stay together. I can't do this without you." "You can," he said, his voice steady, despite the storm inside him. "You're stronger than you think, and now you carry more than just yourself. You carry a life that needs you. I won't be able to protect you both if I stay. You must promise me. Promise me you'll keep going." Tears streamed down her face. "Dmitri, I can't leave you." "You have to," he said firmly, his own voice breaking now. "For him, for her, for the baby. You survive, Anna. That's all that matters." Reluctantly, trembling with fear and grief, Anna nodded. Dmitri handed her the backpack with the remaining supplies, including the potassium iodide tablets, rations, and water. Go now," he urged. She looked back one last time, her eyes meeting his, filled with love, despair, and understanding. Then she turned, moving quickly into the shadows of the forest, each step a mixture of fear and hope. Dmitri stayed behind. He knew the patrols would soon catch up, and the radiation levels ahead were lethal. But he also knew that by staying, he could create a diversion, draw attention away from Anna, and ensure her escape. He swallowed his fear, his grief, and his guilt, and moved toward the open clearing where the soldiers' movements were faintly visible.
Lavrov's apparition appeared beside him, silent for the first time, as if acknowledging the inevitability of Dmitri's choice. Dmitri whispered into the wind, "I'm sorry. I love her. I love them both. I hope someday you'll forgive me." The soldiers appeared around the clearing, their rifles ready. Dmitri stepped into the open, deliberately drawing their attention. He moved with purpose, shouting, waving his arms to make them notice him. The first shot rang out, and he ducked instinctively, using his knowledge of the terrain to stay just out of reach. Each step, each dodge, was a calculated sacrifice, a deliberate act to buy Anna time. As he ran, the radiation stung his lungs, burned his skin, and clawed at his body. He felt his strength failing, the hallucinations of Lavrov merging with reality, a spectral presence guiding him, even as it reminded him of his past sins. Yet he pressed forward, every thought focused on Anna, every heartbeat a promise of survival for her and the child she carried. Finally, Dmitri reached the edge of the clearing, directly in the path of an intense radiation hotspot. He paused, knowing this was his final act. A deep breath, a whispered apology to Lavrov, to Anna, to the life growing inside her, and he stepped forward, allowing himself to be engulfed by the lethal zone. The world around him blurred, the hum of radiation overwhelming his senses. He felt a strange, terrifying clarity, a final moment of acceptance. He was at peace, not because he survived, but because he had ensured the survival of those he loved most. Meanwhile, Anna, guided by instinct and sheer will, had crossed the forest, moving as quickly and carefully as she could. She did not know what had happened to Dmitri, only that he had stayed behind. Her mind raced, but she pressed on, driven by the promise of life.
the life growing within her, and the love she carried for the man who had sacrificed everything for her survival.
Hours later, as dawn broke over the horizon, Anna stumbled upon a safe zone, a small, unguarded area beyond the edge of the exclusion zone. Exhausted, weak, and tear-streaked, she collapsed onto the ground. The backpack with supplies was still strapped to her shoulders, the potassium iodide tablets, a lifeline she would never forget. For a long moment, she could not speak, could not move, could not even cry. And then the realization struck her. Dmitri had given everything to ensure her survival. The man she loved, the man who had carried her through every danger, was gone. Yet, amid the grief, a fragile hope remained. Inside her, a new life stirred, a symbol of endurance, resilience, and the future. Anna pressed a hand to her stomach, tears flowing freely, and whispered, "We'll survive. For you. For both of you." The shadows of Chernobyl receded behind her, but the memory of Dmitri, his sacrifice, and the haunting presence of Lavrov would never fade. Anna's journey was only beginning, fraught with danger, uncertainty, and grief, but also with hope, determination, and the promise of a new life. The world around her was broken, but within her, life persisted. The story of Dmitri and Anna ended in sacrifice, grief, and unimaginable courage, but the legacy of survival continued, carried forward by a tiny, miraculous heartbeat, a new beginning in the shadow of tragedy.